down and listen to records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on vinyl and vision.
Hello, and thank you for tuning into the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Tonight's a very special episode, not only because of my guest, Johnny the Colonel Mcguire, but because we are also celebrating our 1-year anniversary. It was 1 year ago, not to this day, I'm recording this on the 28th, but on the 29th September 2018 is when I debuted my first episode. So I'd just like to dedicate a little bit of time to say thank you to all of my guests, who I will not name only because I do not want to miss out on anybody or forget anybody, but they've all been just great and gracious people, dedicating their time to me and just to hang out with me and talk records. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been just a great experience. And so I'd like to say thank you to them, and thank you to all the listeners, all the people that have been tuning in, subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing. It's all been very, very helpful, and I really appreciate it. I thank you all. I encourage you to keep on doing that, please. Go back into the catalog and go ahead and research any number of the guests that I've had. And, if you find one you like, by all means, share it and do all those things that you do with the internet. I'd appreciate it. So tonight's Johnny the Colonel Mcguire. So some of you may remember him from being a founding member of the band The Royal Crowns, which was founded in September 1993. Went on to be called the Amazing Royal Crowns. He's also been part of the bands The Lucky Diamonds and the Cobramatics, whose music you will be hearing speckled throughout the episode tonight. We are also featuring Chet Atkins' Workshop, was Johnny's record of choice. So that was released in 1961, I believe, and it's a pretty cool record, very guitar heavy, jazzy, finger picky, I think, kind of. But Johnny goes into better detail of it, so I'll leave him to it. You'll also be listening to that right now underneath this little intro. Johnny's also been a producer, he's also been a DJ, and he has also hosted his own guitar show called The Colonel's Guitar Party, which I hope will be making a comeback sometime soon. I think it's been a while since one of those have happened, but definitely an interesting thing to check out if you love guitars and you like good music, similar to the Chet Atkins that we will be listening to tonight. I forgot to mention, Johnny also is an antiques dealer, and he regularly participates in the Providence Flea, which is a very big flea market outdoor vending event. Happens just about every single week. I don't know how many are left this year, but if you see them, go and you can find him. Otherwise, he's always at other big events. Typically, those rock and roll yard sales are usually a big one. But check him out on all the social medias, and you can follow him there and find out more information about where he will be and when he will be there, because he's not just in Rhode Island, he does travel around. So give him a follow, look for him, help him out. Thank you very much. So yes, everyone, thank you again. Like I said before, just do all the things you do with the internet, and I would really appreciate it. Without further ado, here is our show. Enjoy. Hi, Johnny. So we're in your loft space. Do you have a name for this, or is this just kind of just Johnny's house, Johnny's home?
My pad.
Yeah. Well, so as a record seller, as a record
collector, dealer.
Dealer.
Started as a collector, and it was because of music. So it's like
Right.
really. Yeah.
So this is your own personal collection here, this section.
Yeah, this is all my own stuff. It's messy, but I need to go through things. But I've got it kind of organized.
And so where do you keep the records that you sell? Like, as far as, like, I mean, how many do you have right now that are actually for sale?
When I bring stuff to shows, it's like 300 usually. I have like a certain amount of crates, like 6 crates of good stuff, and then like 1 bucket of stuff that just I sell cheaper.
Yeah,
so
like little.
That's mostly in my van. And every week I try and get like 50 records a week ready that I go out and find and try and get stuff. So
Right, new inventory.
this is all stuff I try and keep, but sometimes I have to, if I'm low, I have to dig into this a little bit. So,
Huh.
but I have like 50 or so records to go this week for every show. So sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less.
Yeah.
But generally it's like 50.
So I'm kind of curious, like where your mind goes to for like your go-to music, like your home listening stuff.
Well, when I'm at home, when I'm getting records ready and relaxing during the week, I listen to stuff like this, mellow, like loungy Latin jazz stuff. I really like. It's like in like organ stuff, organ with guitar. This is stuff that I was, into a long time ago. I still listen to it all the time, but I just listen to mellow stuff when I'm home.
Yeah.
I go out and find a collection. I go out and find stuff every week, and it's mostly, I can't keep like the great classic rock stuff that sells because I won't make any money.
Right.
I keep things that, okay, I'll keep this blues thing or this jazz thing or this something. I keep a few of those.
Yeah.
I go in there. But mostly I can't keep certain, cool things. Like classic stuff like Pink Floyd or any of that stuff. I'm not crazy fan of a lot of classic rock, so it's actually easier for me to sell it.
Right.
I like and appreciate a lot of it, but it's not stuff I need to have in my collection. Growing up, I heard so much of that it like, all right, I got it.
Right.
But it's cool to go back and listen to some of that later on, and years later, and go, oh, all right, like I get it, I understand it.
Right.
There used to be so much stuff on the radio that you heard all the time. So it's like I've heard this Doors record and this
Yeah.
this Bob Seger album and all this stuff 3 million times growing up. So
Well, plus because now you're going through it, like you get these collections, and then you actually go through the music. I'm assuming you listen to everything, right?
I can't listen to everything because it's coming in so quickly, and I'm
Right.
trying to get it.
But at least you have the opportunity to put it on and to listen to
Oh
it
yeah, some
again.
things I check and I listen and make sure they're cool, and some things I know what it is. But I wish I had more time to sit down and listen to some of the, I didn't have a ton of records growing up. I wasn't this collector from a kid. We had records, but then CDs, cassettes and CDs came along, so my record collection started more when I started playing guitar. So I started really getting more into records. So I was past the classic rock. I was into unusual instrumental records and stuff, all guitar related things. So,
Right. So Chet Atkins Workshop. Now, what is this record to you? Like, as far as why would you choose this?
when I first really started getting into playing guitar, and I just grew up listening to I remember being a kid and looking at the TV, and it was like they were showing all these commercials for people that were from the 50s, and it was like reissuing all those records and stuff. It was like the Everly Brothers, it was Bill Haley, it was Buddy Holly, it's all this stuff, and Elvis, and so that's what I liked as a kid. And then there was all this rock and roll going on too that was into. But then when I started getting into guitar, I was really into certain guitar players, but then I would see what they liked, and I would go backwards into what they were into. And then once I discovered the Chet Atkins stuff, Chet Atkins was a household name, but I didn't really know. It was like, oh, Chet, this country guy. Everybody thought he was the most famous country guitar player, and but then I started, I found some records, and this one I like because it's kind of sounds early stuff. It's in the middle, and he was experimenting with all these sounds.
Yeah.
There's some of the stuff you hear in these late 50s, early 60s are the first wah-wah on a record, the first these crazy echoes and tremolos and stuff that these guys are experimenting with. They're on these records, and it's the first time you're hearing them ever. There's all these sounds.
Yeah.
And his playing was just like unbelievable. And I would hear that, and it's everybody. I think a lot of people know me. They're like, I was like really into Chet, and I like all kinds of things. But he was the guy that really got me going into, just trying to be a better guitar player and also be a good person. This guy was like one of the nicest people in music, and I looked up to him. Like this guy's a great model.
Yeah.
As a person,
Yeah.
Without him and what he did, there wouldn't have been so much music.
Yeah.
He inspired everybody that got, Scotty Moore and Dwayne Eddy and the Ventures and all these other people, even blues people. I talked to B.B. King one time, and he said, "What do you like?" And I was like, "Well, I like, these guitar players." And I was kind of like a little embarrassed because I was, most people go, "Yeah, I'm into this blues guy." And I'm like, he's like, "What do you listen to?" I'm like, Chet Atkins, Dwayne Eddy, The Ventures, Mickey Baker. And he's like, "Oh my God, I love all that stuff."
Oh, yeah.
He's like, those guys, we were all trying to be like that. Even I, growing up in Memphis, we were trying to be like Elvis. And
Right.
he's like, it's not what you think for some of those blues guys. They think, oh, they're going to be into playing Blake or Charlie Patton and stuff. He's like, no, we're into Chet. He's like,
Right.
everybody was into him.
Yeah. So now you choosing this record, like I was saying earlier, I'm not familiar with this era of music. I'm not familiar with the guitar players for the most part. I mean, I know the name, but I know what to assume sound-wise from this. What drew you to it, and like where did you end up going musically because of your influence, because of this influence on you?
Well, the sounds were like these crazy echoes, and like it's really unusual and pure too. It was really clean, but this guy's playing was like he was playing with his thumb and his fingers, and it sounded like 2 or 3 guys at the same time, and it was one. And some of his records he made in an afternoon, and it's like 10 songs of this unbelievable. Some of his early stuff was like a few classical songs, and then a few rock and roll things, and then a few jazz things. Everybody, I think back when I got into it, thought he was country, but he could play anything, and he inspired all the rockabilly and surf and everything. Everybody, was thought him and Les Paul were,
The pioneers, the innovators
they were
for the genre.
Travis. And there's other guys too that did it, but they're like the big ones.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
I love seeing the records. I love seeing the Gretsch guitars on the covers, and I think this stuff made a big difference for everybody who was for George Harrison, for Eric Clapton, The Edge, anybody that was, all the British Invasion guys, Jimmy Page, all of them were, liked seeing the old records and just getting this thing and got, wow, that guitar's.
Yeah.
A lot of people that got into music saw the guitars.
So you think it was a lot of a visual kind of inspiration just as much as it was the actual music that was on the
big
record?
time. It was like, look at this crazy guitar. I want a guitar like that.
Right.
It's going to make me sound great.
That big semi-hollow body, right? Like,
yeah. It was just like, wow, that's where it's at for me. And some people like new, I'm into new instruments as well, but looking at this stuff back in the day, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
That's where I want
They
to
do
be
look
going.
pretty amazing. I mean,
yeah, the Gretches they were so cool, and colors were amazing, and they had all this great hardware on them, and
right.
in all his early records, they gave him this cool new model, and he would put it on his covers. And the other thing I loved about the Chet records was they always had a date on the back. Like a lot of records don't have that. It's a tiny thing, but to me, it's like, okay, now I know when this happened. And a lot of times you look at records and it's like, I have no idea when this was made, and you have to go do all this research. It's like, oh, Chet, 1961. So you can tell, when he started doing stuff and,
Yeah.
what was going on at that time.
May I take a look at it? Just because, wait, so it's the copyright date, right? So
Yep.
now even for reissues, the copyright date remains the same. But
Yeah.
the publishing will change to be like, 2013 or whenever it was reissued.
Yeah, but they I think they reissued these things on
Yeah.
CD. I don't know if they put his stuff out on vinyl again, but
Yeah, I don't know. I
they
wonder.
should.
Let's take a look at that. So this is your own personal copy. This is a copy that you would not sell at one of your fairs, right?
No, I keep like
Looks great.
I've collected all his stuff and the Ventures and Dwayne Eddy and all that stuff, and I keep most of those. I get some of those here and there, and I do sell them, and it's exciting for me because this is stuff I really like. Like, it's not stuff that, like, I get a lot of people and they're like, well, what, I said, what are you into? And then I said, well, try this out, and try this record, and I like it when people let me refer things to them. So, like, well, this guy's one of the best guitar players that ever lived, so.
Yeah, I just want to take a little bit of detail of your record here, just because, I like to focus on the record itself just as much as the music and the guests that are on the shows. But like you're saying, what I find intriguing about this record is the photo here on the cover. You can see all of that technology behind him, all of that new stuff that he was, I guess, experimenting with.
Well,
because as well on the back here it has this funky drawing.
Yeah, the crazy thing about him was that was in his house.
Right.
He was so ahead of the curve. He was getting this equipment. He took it home. He would record some of his parts at home and then do the rest in the studio. But he was a perfectionist, He was like, he wanted things to sound great and put out this great. But a lot of the stuff, he put it together, and he got stuff from, he designed a lot of these, and some of these things are. I have friends that are into this. I think this is an iconic. It's got a guitar in the background, all this gear, and it's just like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And I did research, and I'm like, wow, what did all this stuff do? And yeah, it was just experimenting and creating. He was inventing this stuff. Les Paul did the same thing.
Right. So now, when you were describing the influence of this on you, you had mentioned something about you used the word rockabilly, as in like those people like gained their influence from this, highly, of course, heavily. I would use that same word to describe what I know of you and your musical styling and the music that you've done, that I know that you've done. That's fair to say.
Yeah.
And what put you in that direction? Because I don't know, rockabilly to me is a very strange thing because I feel like it's very much a lifestyle. Is that right?
Well, it is and it isn't. Yeah, I mean, some people think it is. To me, it's the music, and it's a certain. It's almost it was came out of country and blues, and they took this stuff and made it more energetic and upbeat. It was really like punky.
Yeah. Right. So what is it about rockabilly? Because do you have to make a conscious effort to say like, okay, I want to be a rockabilly player, I want to be in a rockabilly band? Or is it just kind of like what came out of you? Because I don't know what your writing process was like. I don't know, kind of where you started musically. Like,
I liked all kinds of, like I said, when I was a kid, I was into old rock and roll and 50 stuff. But around me in the world was 70s rock. It was Pink Floyd and The Doors and AC/DC and Steve Miller and all that going on. And then there were early punk stuff, and alternative came in later.
Yeah.
I was into all kinds of things, but then once I started to play guitar, I got it was more into like kind of like stuff at the time that I thought was cool and unique and pushing it, and stuff that was the people that I liked were like The Edge and Johnny Marr and Peter Buck and new bands in the 80s, Replacements, Husker Du, all this, tons and tons of stuff, but they were all when I read interviews with them, and I was always doing research on people and where did they get their sound from and how did they come up with this. That time, everybody was saying, what I do is cool, but go off and do your own thing. Don't sound like me, come up with it. In the 80s, the big thing was do your own style.
Mm-hmm.
Don't copy people.
Yeah.
And so I that was important for me, I gotta do my own thing. That's the rule. That was
Yeah.
nobody was like, you could go copy, and there was always people that copy somebody's style, but I was like, I'm gonna come. I didn't know how to play. I went out and remember seeing U2 live at Red Rocks and seeing The Edge, and I'm like, or The Clash, and bands like that, being like, wow, this is so cool. I want to be like this guy. So I went and bought a guitar. I went out and bought this Black Fender Stratocaster. Literally I had no idea how to play a guitar. I didn't know how to tune it. I didn't know anything. I didn't know you had to tune it. So I bought this. I had a neighbor that worked in the music business, and I said, I want a Black Fender Stratocaster. I want to be The Edge. And he said, all right, comes over one day with, how much you want to spend? I said, well, I have $300. And this is in 1985. And he said, he comes over with this black Strat, and he said, I got this at this place. And so I gave him the money, and I just would pull it out every day and look at it. I didn't know how to play it. I didn't know how to tune it. I went and got a tuner. Then started sitting down and just trying to learn.
Yeah.
And I figured out very quickly that I wasn't good at learning other people's stuff. I couldn't figure it out. So I just started writing things. Just really simple things. And that's how my playing progressed. But I was not good at learning.
So how old were you when you started?
18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Late to the game.
Yeah. That's amazing. So you taught yourself, you were just kind of learning by ear, you kind of just figuring out things, learning how to kind of make your own little fingerings and chord progressions.
Yeah, I would sit down and listen to records and try and play it, and it was just
frustrating.
Not happening at all. And I tried, and I used to play records like this, and my parents would knock on the door and be like, wow, that sounds great. And is that you? And I'm like, no, that's Chet Atkins. I've been playing 4 weeks. I'm not.
Yeah, no, I'm not a virtuoso.
Or 4 months or a year, and they weren't into it at all. They didn't think music was like a hobby. I get things on my Instagram feed, and it's a band that's brand new, or somebody that hasn't been playing long, and they're just paying to get a commercial, and I'm getting to see these people that just started playing.
Right. I
don't even feel comfortable putting stuff out there that is new, but everybody else does. It's I'm more picky. I want this to sound good and sound finished and be professional. Not just writing a song and throwing it out there on the internet and letting people think, hey, tell me what you think.
Right.
To me, that's crazy.
Well, you had that ethic, burned into your mind earlier on, being well, this is the way you do it, which is a good ideology, I think.
People understand. When I started, I had no idea how to play. I was learning, but I was trying. Mm-hmm. People understand that, and I was always improving, so they got it. But you just got to be. I think you got to be careful about what you're putting out there, and just make it your best thing. People understand. They can tell if you're sincere.
Right. They can tell you're working on something.
Yeah. You can play 3 notes. That's okay. Just make it. Try hard,
Right.
So crazy.
So you got to meet a lot of really, or at least kind of see and possibly interact with some of these now probably massive or influential or cult-like people, right? Yeah,
I saw stuff from 5 feet away that, in when there was 20 people there, or 50 or 75, or 400. But compared to 10 or 50,000, that's seeing these great bands at the time with 400 people was pretty.
Yeah.
The first club show I went to see was the Replacements.
Wow.
And the Tim tour, and it was insane. I was like 18, and I got in somehow. Drinking age was 21, but and they were crazy. They were drunk as hell, and they could barely play.
Yeah.
But I mean, because they were wasted. It's not like they couldn't. They had great tunes, and
Right.
they were just so drunk. But it was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It was
amazing.
wild. I started going to see bands all the time, Who's Skidoo and Chameleons, and anybody that was up and coming, and all these cool local bands that were around here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of it, was alternative. But I saw anything. I saw Social Distortion and the Cramps and the Red Hot Chili Peppers in front of 50 people, and
Wow.
tons of stuff like that. There was stuff here all the time. People were at these clubs were actively seeking out great stuff and bringing it here.
Right.
I don't think that happens as much.
Yeah.
I think I see in Providence getting passed over a lot.
Now especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I remember being in my old band, the Royal Crowns, and going into a truck stop or something, and people go, "Oh, look, it's the guys from Happy Days." It's like, it was, because rockabilly was sort of underground. It was like punk. Punk and rockabilly wasn't acceptable. You weren't treated well.
Oh yeah. Right.
Having earrings or looking different, it's become very acceptable and cool.
Tattoos.
It wasn't back then.
Right.
Nobody had tattoos. You were really looked at differently and treated differently for being into punk or alternative.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes sense.
I'm glad you can be whatever you want to be now and be accepted, and it's cool, and it's on TV. I think it's great to be diverse, and I'm glad people are treated better.
Yeah. Yeah.
All across the board in the world, no matter what you do, I'm glad that you can have tattoos or be different or have any color hair you want or dress any way you want. I think that's incredible, and it's great.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so can I ask you a couple things, because we need to actually get into this record a little bit, and before we get there, I wanted to ask you a little bit about being in the Royal Crowns.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what they're called now? I know that there was the name change.
Well, there was a name change a long time ago,
Right.
and that
Speaking
was,
of copyright issue, right? Like, or
Yeah, we were playing, and there was another band. There was other bands with those two words in the name.
Mm-hmm.
There was a band from California called the Royal Crown Review, and we were getting bigger. They were getting big, and there was people. They thought people were getting confused with the records, but we were a different style. But anyway, they ended up, approaching us and saying, you need to change your name. And so we'd already changed it once. We started as the Royal Crowns, and there was a band in Canada called the Royal Crowns. There was a band called Crown Royal. There was a band called the Royal Trucks. There was this band and that band. It's 10 bands, but we were successful and we were a target. And so we were approached, and we changed it once to the Amazing Royal Crowns, and then that wasn't good enough for them. So we, at that point, I was not happy with the way things were going, and I was going out the door, and they changed. The name had to change again at that time.
So they dropped the Royal.
Yeah, they just called Amazing Crowns.
Right.
So they continued for a few years after that, and then recently gone back to using the old name, but the old name does not is not a realistic
depiction of
what
the
the
band
is.
was.
Yeah, it's
Right.
if you're gonna call your band something and people expect it to be that,
Right.
and they're gonna show up because they think it's gonna be a real reunion,
Right.
you better have that. If it's not that, then you got problems.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You can't call it, the Rolling Stones or the Doors or the Red Hot Chili Peppers and not have key members there.
Right.
It's okay if you want to call it, something else, what it really is. If you want to call it the Amazing Crowns, that's fine.
Right.
You can't call it the Amazing Royal Crowns and not have me there.
Right.
Or,
right.
you know, it's not the same thing.
This is not the first reunion that they did.
No, they've done a few.
Right. And so you've never been approached for any of those incantations?
I tried to put some together, and then then when they finally came around to doing it, I was approached, but we couldn't. I was, promised that I would have more to do with it, and then as it got closer to the shows, it got narrowed down to having very little, if anything, to do with it.
Yeah.
So in that point, I was just like, this makes no sense. Why? They're just using the name to draw people to sell tickets, and I didn't think that was fair. That's not cool to trick people into something. Like if you're going to do a reunion of the Smiths, and you're not going to have Johnny Marr there, that's not the Smiths.
Right.
Or if you're not going to have a key guy in the band, it's and I'm available, like I can play. So why is this other guy that I understand you have other musicians that have come, but you can't. Why I can get up and play these songs? Why am I going to play 2 songs when I could play all my songs? Why is somebody else going to play my songs?
Yeah. That I mean, see, so I don't understand the like what happened there, because obviously there could be a number of different factors in there. Obviously, because they have another record that they released without you.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that part because I wasn't there. I wasn't part of the band. But if you are being asked to do only a couple of songs out of this whole set list, and they're still going to play the songs that you were on, that you played, that you wrote, that you helped write. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense to be a little bit kind of peeved about the thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It sounds like it's just a strange situation altogether.
It is. We, when it started, it was from the beginning of that band. There was always tension, and it was like, people that, I was really, like, gotten into, really wanting to do like original, authentic rockabilly type of stuff, and the singer came from a different musical background, but at the time appeared that he was into that too.
Yeah.
So we formed this band, and we did like punk, and we liked, a few bands at the time, but I was very adamant about making sure we didn't sound like them. I was trying not to sound like Reverend Horton Heat, or not to sound like Social Distortion, or Southern Culture and the Skids, or the bands that were a little bit ahead of us. Growing up like the Stray Cats, but not trying to sound like that, trying to create our own thing. Going back more into the old stuff, the Scotty Moore and Dwayne Eddy and Ventures. That's why I was really into it. The bass player was on the same page, and the singer liked all that, but he was pushing it more towards a punk or a rock type of thing.
Yeah.
And I could only do so much of that with a 50s Gretsch guitar, and what I was fighting back on some of that. Like, I didn't start this band to be just a rock, a punk band, or a hard rock band, or a metal band. That was not the plan here.
Yeah.
And that's what it was turning into.
Yeah.
And that's what I was fighting back against. And then, but we didn't get along. I'm not going to mince words. We didn't.
Right.
Some days me and the bass player, I would come up with ideas, and he would add in, but the singer came and he wasn't there all the time. Most of the stuff was written, and I think that happens in a lot of bands. It's not uncommon. You get the music together, and then you bring the singer. I don't want to waste a drummer's time or a singer's time by sitting there working out my parts. I mean, that's not fair to them. So, but there is times where we did put it all together and present it and then do it. But, but there was always problems and tensions and stuff. And I had problems too. It's not everybody. I never this point in my life, I don't blame it all on other people. I drinking and partying and all kinds of other unsteady life, and but I really wanted to be a musician, and I cared about people. I cared about fans. I knew that if you don't have people that are into it, if you don't have a following, you don't have anything.
Right.
It doesn't matter how great you are. If you don't get people to come see you, you don't have a band.
Right.
You can be the greatest thing out there, but if you're not good to people and you don't give back to them, I cared about that, and I still do. And but things changed, and the band started to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And we were also touring like crazy, and it was a lot. And we had gotten onto a bigger label, and there was pressure, and it just exploded. And what should have happened was taking a break and taking time off, and I didn't get that. It was like, I'm leaving, I'm done, pissed off, and I went my own way, and got somebody to take over, and so I just went and did my own thing. I had music, and I felt like I can write and I can play, and I'll just keep doing that, and I can keep doing these things.
Right.
So it's like, I'll start another band. But once you're out of that loop, I went to the bottom. I had to start over again. It was like going to clubs and, hey, you're not in the band anymore, you can't get in for free, you can't do this. You have to, bands that used to open for me, now I'm opening for them as the opening band at 8 o'clock on a bill. I went all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
And had to start all the way over again several times.
Right.
And the music scene was changing too.
Right.
After I left, people, the rockabilly thing and swing had come in, but it was now going out. And a lot of the local music scene had also changed. The clubs were changing, the people were leaving town, and it was all different things were going on. So it's sort of like, I think if we were more together, and I had, and I was more mature and grown up, and we all were, and but I don't know if that band would have ever.
Whatever would have lasted because of the nature of your relationships to begin with.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not a great place to be in, because
No.
I always associate being in a band as in being like in a romantic relationship, because if it's
you are with 4 people.
Yeah.
You're married to 4 people.
Yeah,
You spend a lot of time together.
So I mean, and we have all had our share of like bad relationships, things that we knew is just like, well, this is fun for now, but it's probably not healthy.
Well, you could tell right off the bat. This is fucked up.
Right.
This is.
So it's exactly that. So
it's a bad thing, but I'm going to keep dating this person because we're getting somewhere.
It started going well.
Yeah.
There was something that was paying off, that was making it worth the while. All the while, you're knowing in the back of your head, it's like, this isn't going to end well.
A house built on a weak foundation is never going to stand up. Over time, it's just going to fall apart. If your foundation, whether it's business or music or anything you're doing, if you don't have a solid foundation, the bands that have survived through history are ones that were friends first.
Right.
There's so many bands that came and went that met in college or met after or whatever, and they just came and played, and then they split apart because they weren't friends. There was nothing that held them together. Like, there's bands that's still together over 40, 50 years, and they fight and they had their things, but they were started as friends, and they will end as friends.
Right.
As much as you hear of guys in some bands, the Keith Richards and the Mick Jaggers not getting along.
Right.
Your money may be keeping them together, but the thing is that they've known each other for a long time.
And they love each other. To a degree, at least.
They may and they may not. I don't know them personally, but some people can't stand each other, but money may keep it together. Yeah. If you're making money and you can at least record, or you can stand on stage and not want to kill each other.
Right.
that. You don't have to love each other
Okay,
too.
a certain amount of respect, let's
Yeah,
say.
just realize that the band is bigger than the 4 people in it, or the 5, or whatever.
Right.
If you can just get through that, maybe you're looking back on that thing. But I look at it now, and some things are just never. Some bands are never going to do a reunion. Some just can't stand each other and don't care and don't respect each other. You know, that happens.
Right.
So it'd be nice if every band could reform, but sometimes it pushes people to go places that they didn't think they could go.
Right.
And that's good. And hey, you know, I'm never going to get along with these guys. They don't like me, and I can't do anything to change that. If you think that the other guitar player is better, or they're a better person, or whatever you think, it's not my problem.
Right.
I've got to figure out my own things, but maybe I can take these songs and do something and sing or play them, and you know, I will at some point go and do what I did before and get that back out there. Because
Yeah.
people ask me all the time.
Yeah.
People ask me, this band just did a reunion. Where were you? We came.
Right.
We came to see you. I had a guy that just came to one of my flea markets. He's in a wheelchair, paraplegic for almost 30 years. And they went to the show because they thought I was going to be there. You want to talk about disappointment? Like, I came in my, you know, we came, all these people, we came to see you play. That's disaster.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, I said, well, they didn't ask me. I said, I would have loved to have warned everybody and told them. And I feel bad. But maybe someday I will make it up to people, because that band doesn't care about, you know, you can act like you care, but if you don't show it, that's a different thing.
Right.
You have to show people that you care. And whether you get along or not, you should, if you're going to call something a name, that's what it should be. Not your ideal version of it
Right.
that you think works. Every band started with an original lineup. And you can, you know, people come and go. That's okay. But if you're going to call it one thing, you got to, you know.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it and keep everybody happy. But some people just don't want to do that. So you can't change them.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, that's a whole different realm of, like, you know, kind of like business issue, like who owns the name and all that stuff like that. And I don't know if you guys ever went down that alley. I know that it's not something I ever really heard of or thought of as like being a musician in the city, but obviously it has some weight to it. It has something like some severe like legal clout that you need to kind of work out.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's one of those things where you're obviously not making an issue out of it. It's not in your interest to make a scene out of this, or, you know, fight that whole issue.
Yeah, it's just, I just like people to know what they're getting.
Right.
If you advertise something as being, you know, a certain, whether it's cereal or a store or a band, when you advertise something as being something, it should be what you say it is.
Right.
Not what it isn't.
Right.
Or what, you know, there's things to it, but I can't, I can only control what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in charge of me. I'm not in charge of anybody.
Right.
You know, I do my thing. I've gone off. I've done antiques, and I've been doing that for a long time. But when people bring something up from the past, I thought the whole thing was over and gone and done, and we can, you know, those guys went away, and then they got to keep bringing it back.
Right.
And it's not cool.
Right.
You gotta be cool about shit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be that old guy telling people I used to be somebody.
Right.
Because right now I'm not that somebody. I'm a guy selling records and comics and antiques.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that too, because obviously that's what you do now. That's your main job, right? That's your life.
That's what I do. I travel around, and I'm also in Providence, been back here, and I do these local antique shows and other events, and that's what I do, and I like it.
Right.
So you're a good resource for me, because as a also a record seller. I mean, I'm a very novice and low level, dealer, if that's what you want to call it. But I was interested in talking with you because of that, because obviously you've been doing this for long enough, and kind of wanted to know, like, well, what's your, like, what brought you to doing this as, like, your career? Like, what made you choose dealing as a...
Another thing completely fell into it. Didn't plan on it. I had music was slowing down. The music scene was changing, and things happening with bands, and I had stuff. I always liked antiques and vintage stuff, and
Art.
Collected it and was into it, and loved the 50s and 60s and what they now call mid-century, but we always just called it 50s stuff. But I always loved antique things, and then I just started like, well, I found this place called the Rhode Island Antique Mall, and I was going in there and going to vintage shops all the time, even when I was younger. And like, oh, maybe I should try selling some of the stuff I have. So I went in and I got a booth in this place, and you pay rent and you put stuff out and you sell it. And then I just started to pick up speed. I didn't know I would be selling records and comics and all this. I had no idea that was going to happen. I'd be doing this full time.
Yeah.
No clue. Just happened.
Yeah.
I got
so
into it.
It just took your interest took kind of a hold of that business.
Yeah, if I'm gonna, if I've always been this way with everything I've done in life, if I'm gonna do it, I'm doing it. I'm not like, there's times where I'm doing a few things, but I try and really do it. So I'm
Focus
all in.
on the one.
Yeah.
Give that one thing that gets its attention.
Yeah, I had a friend years ago with the music, and he said, "You're one of the only people I ever met that took all the eggs, put them in one basket, and made it work." And I go, well, that's what you're supposed to do, right?
I have many eggs in many baskets. It's I don't know. It's a little.
Well, I think over the years I've
daunting.
become more of like spread things out, and like still like, I'm gonna music, and then this and this art. I'm into art, and now there's lots of different things I'm trying to narrow it back down. I kind of lost music. I lost that a little bit or a lot. So trying to get, eventually I'll get back to that. That sort of like was my thing that I did nonstop. I practiced and played and was so into it, but then the music scene changed, so
Right.
I changed, and I went with what I thought was working better for me.
Yeah.
So it's a nice curve.
All right, Johnny. Hey, well, thank you very much for doing this with me.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Let's
it.
listen to some Chet Atkins.
Cool.